Welcome back to the Clinical Insider. As I was wrapping up 2023, spent some time reflecting on what is really helping our practice and driving it forward. And so that's how we came up with the topic for our first Clinical Insider of the year. Our favorite appointment is our initial appointment. So that appointment for us here at BioLounge is a 75-minute appointment. Sometimes they run over depending on what your client is presenting with, but we do our best to try to stick to that 75 minutes. But we love these long appointments because they're really a great opportunity to build a foundation with our clients, really dive into what's going on. And the best part of these appointments is asking the questions that get you the information that can help you uncover how you're going to help move this person forward. And so over the last year, I learned a lot about great questions to ask. I had a lot of good questions we were already asking, and then we learned from other providers and from our own patients who really helped us start going down other paths on some questions we should be asking to really make sure we're getting to the root cause of what's going on for our clients. And so I want to share with you my top 10 questions that I feel like had a major impact on my practice and helped my clients move forward. At BioLounge, we say a lot that we ask our clients to do hard things. And I think part of asking our clients to do really hard things, like completely changing their diet and lifestyle, is understanding why you're asking them to do that and having their personal knowledge that you can use to drive them forward and help them make this commitment of doing hard things to themselves. And so one of the first questions I start every appointment asking is, what brings you to this appointment today? And everyone has a different reason. I've had clients that show up because somebody made the appointment for them. I have clients who showed up because they've been in and out of doctor's offices and they're really frustrated and they know that diet and lifestyle is really the major contributor to what's going on in their life. I've got a lot of different answers. And sometimes you'll read the intake paperwork and you see all these things going on and you think you know why someone showed up at this appointment. And then what they tell you is completely different. And so even though you have all this intake paperwork and really great questions, I think it's important to ask, why are you here today? Another question I love that I've adopted from Megan is, what would you fix with a magic wand? And I think that's a really great question. And the answers that you get from clients range and go in a lot of different directions. And so I love incorporating that question into my practice, and Megan does as well. Another good question is, what are your long-term health goals? So you ask them what brought them to their appointment, and they might bring up a bunch of symptoms and issues they've been encountering and things they want to address, but it doesn't really tell you what their long-term health goals are. So maybe someone presents and they have chronic debilitating stomach ache and loose bowel movements, and they're really frustrated about that. But their long-term health goals are bigger than just their digestive issues. And so really understanding where you're trying to go. And this is helpful because once you clear those really annoying symptoms that are impacting their daily life, you then have this new direction of your long-term health goal is, and now you can drive them towards it. So I have clients who have long-term health goals of being able to get down on the floor and play with their grandkids and have the energy to do the things they want to do with their grandkids. And so that's really motivating. That tells me their purpose and their why. And then I have clients who start to reveal, well, my mother suffered from this, or during that later part of her life, she has had troubles that I don't want to have, or encountered diseases that I don't want to have. And so you really have this path of, oh, how do I help you avoid this and drive it forward? I don't ask all these questions back to back. And so we have an extensive intake process. We flow through a pattern. And so these questions will come up in appropriate times throughout our intake process. So I want to make sure as I'm telling you our favorite questions, you don't think I just sit there and ask these questions one after the other. Another great question I learned from one of our students this year is, what brings you joy? I think that can be a really powerful question to understand, like, where there's good in their lives, especially when you're seeing patients with a lot of chronic disease. It's hard because they've been suffering or they're in pain and they have all these things going on and they can't live their lives in the way they want to. And so really understanding where the joy is in their lives, or if they have a lack of joy in their lives, that's going to be really important, because we know loneliness and lack of purpose, those things are going to impact health just as much as a really great diet. As we're moving through the intake process, we now have a sense of family history. We have a sense of what brought them to the appointment. We understand their long-term health goals. We went through what medications they're taking, what supplements they're taking, what diagnosis they have. We've asked a lot of questions. And so then one of the questions I like to ask somewhere in the middle of the appointment is, when was the last time you felt your best? Because that can be really revealing. Often they will lead you back to a time and some lifestyle habits and choices they were making that were serving their health that they know they need to get back to. And so it's sort of creates the path forward sometimes, and it doesn't always, but it's really helpful. I mean, I've had patients who have said, I haven't felt well since I was a teenager, and they're now in their 50s, and that's going to be a harder path to get back to. But then I have had patients who remember a time several years earlier when they were eating really well and moving their body. They had connections, social connections in their lives, and they start identifying these habits that they know serve them better. And so they start to present this roadmap that you're going to strengthen and help them get back to. A great follow-up question when you ask them when was the last time they felt your best is to really ask them, like, what were you doing in your life? So they might not go into that detail. So they might be like, oh, the last time I felt my best was before the pandemic, when I was, working outside my home, doing X, Y, and Z, but they might not tell you about their diet and lifestyle. So you want to ask them a little bit deeper, like, okay, so you told me this was the time when you were feeling well. What was going on then? What were you doing? Were there any lifestyle habits that were serving you during that time? Another question, if someone's presenting with a lot of chronic disease, is understanding how has their condition changed the way they go about their day-to-day life, so that you can understand what are the day-to-day things they're trying to get back to that you need to focus on. So at the end of the appointment, I often recap for myself somewhere in my chart notes, like what are their priorities? And so a lot of these questions are going to take you back to that priority so that you can make sure when you're creating a plan for this patient that you're keeping their goals in mind and not your own personal intentions for them, but the things they've identified for you. If someone's got a lot of chronic disease, another question is, what do you think triggered your condition? And it's interesting because they sometimes come up with the answers, and now they've done this investigative work for you. And so, for example, I asked this to a client. She had chronic kidney disease. She had autoimmune disease that attacked her kidney, and she was having all this issues. And when I asked her what was a triggering event, she went back to college, and she remembered that her blonde hair turned green in college when she was using the water at school and living in the dorms, and that all of her roommates also started having symptoms. And those roommates went on to be in their 30s, and several of them that had cancer. And so she sort of identified, like, everything changed for me at college when I started having these issues living in the dorm. And so there might have been something in the dorm, something in the water, something in the air, potentially mold, that contributed to the fact that no one was thriving. And so asking if they know about their triggers, or they will identify habits or things that they know triggered their conditions, that can help you peel back the onion and figure out where to go. As we're moving through the appointment, one of the things I think is important is not to forget is that you want to use their diet as a tool. And so really diving deep into what's going on in their diet. So the question I often ask is, like, walk me through a typical day, morning to evening. What are you drinking? What are you eating? And then there's a lot of follow-up questions once they take me through their day that I'm going to ask to really dive deep into the details and specifics. At the end of the appointment, I think it's really important to recap and understand what's going on. I will present them with options and ideas, like, I would love to run these tests, and here's why. And it's a choose your own adventure. What kind of things do you want to do? And then I would love to start you on some of these supplements, and maybe there's some changes you want to make to their diet or their drinking habits. So I start to make a little bit of a plan and gather information. And at the end, I think that's really helpful to say, like, does it feel like you can do this plan? And if not, what do you think are the biggest challenges? Because then you can really troubleshoot, oh, okay, that might be too much, or let's add this in, or how do we build drinking water into your day? So many of our clients present and they don't drink water throughout the day. So I might say, okay, like, how do we build a plan that helps you get to the place that you're drinking, 80 to 100 ounces of water every day? And then a good question to have them repeat back to you so that you can understand what's happening and what they're taking away at the end of your appointment is, what did you learn today that you're going to take with you? And so that can be really helpful to see what is resonating with them, because you've said probably a lot, you've asked a lot of questions, you've helped them uncover some things about them. And so really repeating back what they learned can help you understand what your patients are taking away from their appointment, or what your clients are taking away from your appointment. Those are just some of our favorite questions here at BioLounge. And if you have a favorite question you think we're missing, I'd love to hear about it. I've learned some really great questions that I brought into practice from other providers in the community, and we're all here to learn. So I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope that you start your 2024 practice off really strong, feeling confident and excited about helping the clients in your practice. And if you have any questions for us, please reach out and send us an email at learn@bioloungepdx.com. Happy New Year.